Hi, this video is part of Latin for Beginners, a self-study course which uses a traditional method of classical Latin instruction and emphasizes reading skills. The course is based on a public domain textbook, Latin for Beginners by Benjamin L. Duge. The text may be found at gutenberg.org, and a link is in the video description. There is also an online practice tool, as well as additional resources and materials for the course at selfstudyclassics.com. This video covers Lesson 9 of the text. Videos on Lessons 1 through 8 may be found in the Latin for Beginners YouTube playlist or in the videos section at selfstudyclassics.com. These videos are meant to reinforce the concepts presented in the text with examples, not to replace the text itself. So you'll get the most out of the video by reading over the lesson before watching. Lesson 9 introduces the second declension. It's a totally new set of endings which is used for some Latin nouns. In this video, we'll work some exercises that involve nouns of this new declension. Here is our first exercise. We'll translate into English the sentence, In opido pila legato bellum nuntiant. Let's start with the first word. In is a preposition. It means in or on. We'll say in and revise it later if we need to. Opido is a noun. The long O ending could be ablative singular or dative singular. Since it follows a preposition that takes the ablative, we are going to assume it's ablative and call it the object of in. Its meaning is the town. Pila is a noun. It's second declension and neuter in gender, so this ending could be nominative plural or accusative plural. We'll assume nominative and revise later if necessary. So it would be the subject, and it means spears. Legato is a second declension noun with a form that could be either ablative or dative singular. We haven't yet learned any uses for the ablative that don't require a preposition, so let's assume that this is dative. We'll use a prepositional phrase with for as a placeholder for the dative relation, as we normally do. So that gives us for the lieutenant. Bellum is a second declension noun. Its gender is neuter, so the ending could be nominative or accusative. It means war. Nuntiant is a verb. Its form is plural, so we need a plural subject. Recall that we weren't sure whether pila was a nominative or accusative. Well, since it is plural, and we have a verb that needs a plural subject, we'll call it the subject and see where that takes us. That makes bellum the direct object. The meaning of the verb is announce, and it's the kind of verb that takes an indirect object in Latin, so we're going to change for the lieutenant to the lieutenant. That leaves us with in the town spears to the lieutenant war announce, or in more understandable word order, in the town spears announce war to the lieutenant, which makes perfect sense as long as we understand it figuratively. On to our next example. Domine ad muros opidani properant. Let's look at the first word. Domine is a noun in the vocative singular case. We haven't talked much about the vocative since we have always been dealing with first declension nouns, and for the first declension, the form is the same as the nominative. As the text makes clear, the form is used for the person to whom the sentence is addressed, and in the second declension singular, it ends in E, while the nominative singular ends in US. The base dominus means master, so in this sentence, the speaker is addressing the master. Ad is a preposition which means to. Muros is a noun. Its form could only be accusative plural. Its position right next to the preposition strongly suggests that it is the object. The meaning of muros is the walls. Opidani is a noun of the second declension. It could be nominative plural or genitive singular. Our intuition tells us nominative plural, since there isn't a strong case for the possessive sense here. So let's call it the subject and see how things go. Its meaning is the townsman. Properant is a verb. Its form is plural, which validates our choice of opidani as the subject. It means hasten. That gives us master, to the walls the townsmen hasten, which sounds pretty good already, but we can make it sound a little less archaic by saying, master, the townsmen hasten to the walls. Alright, let's try another. Servi in opidis, equis dominorum frumentum dant. On to the first word. Servi could be nominative plural or genitive singular. Since we have not seen a subject and there is no other noun yet to engage in the genitive relation, we'll assume that this is the subject. Its meaning is slaves. In is a preposition. It can mean in or on, depending on the context. Opidis is a noun. Its form can be ablative plural or dative plural, but since it follows in, and we know that prepositions never take the dative case, we're going to say it's ablative and the object of in. Its meaning is the towns. Since in the towns is much more likely than on the towns, we will translate the Latin preposition in as in instead of on. Now equis has the same ending as opidis, but here we have no preposition. Let's try the dative for this one and see if it works. So we'll use our placeholder dative construction, a prepositional phrase beginning with for. The base word is equus, meaning horse, so that gives us for the horses. Dominorum is a noun in the genitive plural. It makes sense as a possessive of the noun preceding it, equis. It means masters, and we can infer a possessive adjective from the context here, so that gives us of their masters. Frumentum is a second declension neuter noun, so it could be nominative or accusative. In other words, the subject or the direct object in the sentence. We are going to go with the direct object since we already have a provisional subject, but we can always revise that assumption later if we need to, and either way, it means grain. Dant is a verb. Its form is plural, and it ties up all the loose ends of the sentence. It agrees with the word we assume to be the subject, servi. And it is a verb that accommodates both a direct object, in this case frumentum, and an indirect object, in this case equis. Its meaning is give. So we have slaves in the towns for the horses of their masters, grain give. Since we now know that the horses is an indirect object instead of some other kind of dative relation, we know that to will work better than for, so we will switch that phrase to the horses. That gives us slaves in the towns to the horses of their masters, grain give. Now we can shuffle it around a little to sound more like English and arrive at slaves in the towns give grain to the horses of their masters. Great. Now for our English to Latin exercise. They labor with great steadiness in the cottage of the master. All right, let's look at the first word. We are going to put they together with labor here, since we know personal pronouns don't necessarily need a word dedicated to them in Latin. They can be expressed with the form of the verb. Laborat is the base word for labor, and since they is a plural pronoun, we need the plural form, which is laborant. With is a preposition. The Latin for it is cum. Great is an adjective, and like most attributive adjectives in English, it comes before the noun it modifies. The base word is magna, but we will have to wait to see the noun to decide on the form. Steadiness is a noun. It is the object of with, so we are looking for the ablative singular. The Latin would be constantia. This means the form of magna is also ablative singular. In is a preposition. The Latin for it is in. Cottage is a noun, and the object of the preposition in. In is being used in a positional sense as opposed to a directional sense, so we are going to use the ablative singular here. The form we need is casa. Of the master is a phrase we can render with one word in the genitive, since it simply expresses possession of the cottage. The base word for master is dominus, so the genitive singular form is Domini. Altogether, we have laborant cum magna constantia in casa Domini. Observing default subject-verb word order, we turn this into cum constantia magna in casa Domini laborant. As always, we are permitted to diverge from the default word order in order to emphasize certain words. This often happens with words expressing degree, since they are natural points of emphasis. We might want to emphasize, for example, that the steadiness of the labor was great by moving magna to an earlier point in the sentence. In fact, Latin even allows us to move modifiers in the prepositional phrases outside. Okay, go back to in fact. 3, 2, 1. In fact, Latin even allows us to move modifiers in prepositional phrases outside the prepositional phrase itself, as long as they are close enough that the meaning is still clear. So it's perfectly acceptable to say, magna cum constantia in casa Domini laborant. And it's a good way to put the focus on the idea that the constantia was magna. And that is all for Lesson 9. As always, the best way to achieve mastery of these concepts is to work a lot of exercises, and you can find plenty over at selfstudyclassics.com. Head to the practice section and choose Lesson 9. Once you feel confident about the Lesson 9 material, keep an eye out for the video on Lesson 10 of Latin for Beginners. Thanks for watching.